I'm Carl Nagin with Free Speech TV, and my guest is one of the great gurus of the of the mission-driven venture capital world, and he's going to talk to us about to get us to think a little differently about money and how we use it. And Joel Solomon is a senior advisor with RSF Social Finance. He's a member of the Social Venture Network, Business for Social Responsibility, and Tides Canada Foundation. And he's written a wonderful book, The Clean Money Revolution, Reinventing Power, Purpose, and Capitalism. And I wanted to start by reading something to get us all focused on this that really struck me. And it's really from the cover of the book. He writes, "As a symbol of money, pigs have two faces. One is the prudent piggy bank of long-term thinking. This archetype is tied to our innocent, patient childhood relationship to money. The other image is of the capitalist pig, driven by insatiable greed. This not-so-little piggy goes to market and leaves a trail of destruction, devouring everything to fatten itself. These two symbolic pigs occupy opposite poles, innocence versus greed, patience versus ravenous destruction." So he's going to talk to us about a new archetype of money. And Joel, thank you for being with Free Speech TV and coming on to talk to us. I barely know how to balance my checkbook, so I need some help. And one of the things that this book kind of blew my mind a little bit was this notion that you have that we are on the cusp of a money revolution.
Yeah.
That we are about to experience the largest transfer of wealth in human history, $100 trillion. Hello, tell me, how is that possible, and what's that about?
Well, in North America alone is $50 trillion that will pass hands over the next 3 decades. From olders, like you and me, to youngers like those dudes doing the cameras here.
How come I don't have that much money in my
Yeah, well, it takes a billion of us or something to make
scale.
that over. So yeah, scale. So what's interesting about the fact that money is passing hands is that there's a generation that knew what we did, knew what we knew, and we were relatively intelligent, and we were inventing things, and we were building society. But we weren't thinking as much about the limits and what the effect was of where my money is actually, what is it doing to people and places right now, and what is it doing as I spend my career and I make savings and I pick a bank and I pick an insurance company and I try to pick a savings account of some kind or another, mutual funds or something.
The choices that we're making.
What is happening with that money? And do I not have a personal and direct responsibility if I'm poisoning people's babies or starting wars because of where I bank and the companies I put my money in? And we have lost touch with the fact that our money is us. It represents us. And so the point of the book is to attempt to raise consciousness about that and show a number of stories, people, that there is an actual serious movement underway to change this and bring consciousness to money.
I should say that this book is both a biography, or
Yes.
an autobiography,
Yes.
and it's wonderfully interspersed with these stories, these vignettes of people who have done exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
But I'm struck too that with this revolution, with this transfer, you also write, and this is the darker side of the story,
Yeah.
that there is a handful of billionaires. And I heard 5 this morning from Kenny. You say 80 that control as much wealth as half the population of the planet.
That's right.
And you also quote it's a true cost study that was done in 2010 that shows that the world's 3,000 largest corporations inflicted $2.2 trillion of environmental and social damage. And I believe this is around the year 2010, none of it taxed, all of it externalized to the commons.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there are a lot of millennials out there who do want to do what you're talking about, but
Right.
we also have this entrenched behemoth of corporations
Yes.
that we're up against. So how do you factor that into your story?
Well, the starting place is actually that we have a financial system and structure right now that has gotten bigger and more powerful than it probably should. And it does control a lot of the supply, so to speak, of where we can invest and how we would have our money be used. But more importantly, under that, I believe, is that this point that we have lost touch with how much is enough, what's the purpose of money, what is money doing while we're asleep at night, and that kind of thing. And we've kind of let ourselves be seduced into simply trying to build more wealth so that we can take care of ourselves. So for most people on the planet, that's very legitimate. The questions that I have to do with people like myself who have more than enough, and what is my goal after that? And why do people, once they've got $10 million, need 20 million, need 50 million, need 100 million, they've got $1 billion these days, why do they need 10 billion? And we have people legally able to have $100 billion now. Taxation keeps getting pushed from those of us that can afford it best onto those that can least afford it. And there are trends all across the landscape of the financial world that simply need to be changed. And particularly because our ability as humans to do damage has increased beyond anybody's wildest imagination from 100 years ago.
Right.
So we have to get a grip. We have to realize that the future needs us to get a grip. We've got to change public policy. We've got to fix the financial system so that there are other alternatives to this. And we've got to take personal responsibility as well for what we consume, where we put our money, and what we pass on in terms of education and ethic to our children.
Now you're part of, I'd like you to, let's try and make this a little more concrete.
Yeah.
One of your enterprises is renewal funds.
Right.
So can you tell us what renewal funds does in
Sure.
Canada and how that fits into this paradigm that you're
Absolutely.
describing?
So renewal funds, the idea of renewal funds, which we launched a little bit over 10 years ago, was to, and at that time this field was much more nascent. So renewal funds was a chance to say to investors, we will take your money, manage it, pay us a fee, we will return you a good return. Because the clean money revolution includes one of the biggest money-making opportunities in history as well, which is we're going to change from burning fossil fuels to using renewable energy. We're going to build buildings smarter. We're going to do we're going to do mass transit, and we're going to do transportation in a way that's smarter. We're going to do food systems so that soil is protected and preserved, and so our health is better taken care of. In every sector of the economy, there's a reinvention, which is a huge job creator, creates prosperity, and if it's done fairly and with the long term in mind, and we distribute wealth better through taxation and public policy, my belief is that civilization can get a soft landing and we have something to send forward into the future that we actually can believe in.
Some of this is about short-term thinking and long-term thinking.
Yes.
And it seems to me that one of the problems here is that we have so much wealth concentrated in industries, extractive industries,
Yes.
fossil fuel industries, which are driven by quarterly reports, et cetera, and short-term thinking. How do we convince the people who invest in those industries to come over to long-term thinking?
You gave me a chance to go back and actually answer the question you asked about Renewal Funds Company,
Good.
which is based in Vancouver, Canada, but operates in the US and Canada. And so our job was to provide investors with a pathway to start experimenting with having their money in cleaner industries and cleaner products so that they could get comfortable with that, and we would help build those sectors. And so we invest in companies at early growth stage. We steward and help them and do everything we can to grow them. They eventually get bigger than we can handle, and they go on to other things. We get money out, our investors get money out. The point of that to our now 212 investors in Canada, the US, and some Europeans and Asians is that they begin to understand and believe that there are options that are less exploitive, less damaging, less destructive, and their families, their friends, their financial advisors begin to learn that, and it is part of a movement that's going on across society at consumer levels and at big levels. And some of the missing elements that get us to the question you asked is public policy. Public policy. A lot of this really is about politics. And you said big corporate concentration. Once you have a certain amount of power and money, you also get to influence public policy. We, meanwhile, as citizens, are being systematically distracted and told that politics is bad and that government is bad and that it's wasteful and that we can't do anything about it. And so we are steadily driven away from participation in the political system, or we fight over purity
Splitting
and
hairs, right.
Splitting hairs. And the forces, the corporate forces
Want that.
understand, they want that, and they understand, they work like a military operation.
Yeah.
Command and control. They know what they're doing. And all of us good people are spending a lot of time picking at each other and backing away from participation
Divide and
in the
conquer.
public system. Divide and conquer. Who wants to run for office right now? Do you want to run for office? Who's willing to get involved in politics? We cannot let it get debased that way. We have to reclaim it, and we've got to take it seriously, and we have to move policies.
So on the sunnier side of things, you cite data from the U.S. Social Investment Forum
Yes.
that shows that I think 2014, over 6.5 trillion was invested according to socially responsible investment strategies. Is that growing? Is that something that
Yes.
you?
So I've gotten to see the early stages of what I'm calling a clean money movement.
Yeah.
And it started with people like myself that had a personal health challenge, and I wanted done, and it had to do with the kidneys. Well, the kidneys are the filter for the blood. What do you put in your body? Does it matter? Well, of course it matters. I get out a box at the store, I grab something off the shelf at the store, and I don't know what all those chemicals are. Why do I want to put that through my body? So many, many people, I want my kids to have clean food. I want them to have clean air, I want them to have clean water. So a lot of it starts personally. And several decades ago, I went on this journey. The health food movement and organic food was considered a nearly weird cult.
You were an organic barefoot farmer, I understand, up in Canada for a while.
I was. And so I've watched just that industry go from obscure and weird to now
mainstream.
Making fortunes. It's mainstreamed. Walmart's the biggest seller of organic food in the world now, those kinds of things. And it's still small. It's less than 10% of the American food dollar.
Right.
And it's less than 1% globally. That is going to grow. It's not perfect. It can be improved. But a lot of people are going to get jobs, careers, be able to start businesses, simply providing cleaner food.
Isn't it also true that we need leaders in these kinds of business, these kinds of enterprises? And part of your work, I'm thinking of Hollyhock.
Yeah.
Hollyhock. Tell us about that and what you're doing with that.
So Hollyhock is an educational retreat center located in the islands north of Vancouver. And it's been around for 35 years. And it works on the inner skills primarily. That's its core. Psychological, emotional, spiritual, help us be better humans. Well, the reason to create better humans and support better humans is that we'll be better leaders in all walks of society. Teachers, nurses, business people, politicians. Therefore, a next level of our work became over the years is to bring together gatherings of for-profit, not-for-profit, cultural, social change activists, and spend time together in cross-sector, intergenerational, peer learning environments to get to know issues better, be more whole system understanding,
Thinkers.
Build networks, build relationships, because I believe that relationships among caring people is one of the very best strategies to overcome what we're up against. People working together can create a lot of power.
Joel Solomon, thank you so much for telling us this beautiful mission and changing my mind about how I use my money. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Is there anything else you want to say about your work and about the book?
So the point of the book is I do three things. One is I do tell personal stories, and the reason I tell personal stories is because I had to read about other people's personal stories that did things differently so that I could break out of the mold, number one. So I do that. How did I get weird?
Yeah.
Or how did I get different? Second is I've attempted to map what I saw of this movement unfolding. And people need to know about that because young people are going to have careers, they're going to make choices, and you don't all have to go into what the options were when you and I were young.
Right.
There are a lot of new options, and there are new industries being created, and there's a need to reform the economic industry. So there have been decades already of people working on this, visionaries, dreamers, entrepreneurs, and it's creating an impact on the major financial systems. At that early stages of that, this will not stop. And that's the point about the generational transfer of wealth. And the final section is actually the moral and ethical responsibility that we have to know what our money is doing to people and places, take responsibility for that. And this is a spiritual evolution. This is coming to understand the meaning and purpose of life, why we're here, and our responsibility as ancestors to future generations. That's the game. We got to take care of it.
Mission Venture Capital.
Mission Venture Capital.
All right. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks.